People are now comparing their app experience to those social media apps. We are now conditioned that if things aren't 1 to 2 swipes of the thumb, it's not kind of in the realm of possibilities of things that I like to do. And this is starting to bleed over into the banking world. If I can't send money digitally with 2 swipes of my thumb, I'm going to be frustrated.
Hi, Taylor. Excited to talk to you today about digital experiences in banking. Why don't we first start with introductions? I'm Anna Krementz, and I run our financial services products here at NPS Prism.
And I'm Taylor Lacey, and I run the product here at US Banking.
Thanks, Taylor, for the time today. Why don't we start at the highest level and thinking about the journey experiences? What are the key journeys that should be digital in banking, and how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I think we should start with how this has changed and evolved over time. Before COVID, many banks were trying to push digital to their customers. They were trying to take some of these episodes and journeys and move them out of the branch and put them in the mobile app or in the .com. And it's really around just the idea of it was a lower cost to serve. But it didn't take until the pandemic that forced those customers to actually use those digital channels. We've seen the digital expectations since then continuously change. Those customer expectations are evolving. One of the interesting things that we've seen is since COVID, those banks are slowly not really reopening branches as they thought they would. And because customers are using digital channels more often and those expectations are changing, digital NPS has actually decreased since COVID. It's starting to rebound a little bit, but really since 2019 and 2020, digital is just kind of not where it was in terms of the experience. And that's because the way that things are changing. But in terms of where those episodes are and where it should be in banking, right? I think the first thing is the everyday banking episodes are a great baseline. So think of it as like make a deposit, make a withdrawal, manage my account, send money. Those types of journeys, those are great in the digital channel. We've started to see, though, as these things have evolved, as I mentioned, a lot more emotional journeys have now been becoming in the digital channel. So, first think of those sales episodes like opening up a new account or applying for a new credit card. We're starting to see a lot more customers not only want to use a digital channel to do those things, but also successfully be able to do them in the digital channel. And then finally, really the one that's essentially the hardest to do digitally are those issue resolution, those disputes. So think of resolving, fraud or getting a new debit card because it was stolen, or even disputing a bank fee, right? As people are now using digital channels, they want to do these types of episodes now in digital channels because of that. So they don't want to go to the branch or call into the call center. They want to be able to do it, at their fingertips on their mobile app. One of the biggest things we've seen, though, are do banks allow customers to do that? And really the answer is right now, not fully, really except American Express. American Express has allowed customers to be able to do these types of disputes fully digital, which is now starting to evolve to where banks are now identifying how they can start doing it because this is what customers really want.
That's really interesting. I think especially on the point of digital NPS coming down because it's saying that customer expectations are actually increasing. Good to see that it's starting to come up a bit in 2023, though. However, I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. Why do you think digital expectations are changing so much, and what's driving kind of the experience around these expectations and digital experiences?
Yeah, I think the way it's really around how customers are, kind of evaluating what these digital experiences look like. I think in the very beginning, it was just kind of like, hey, I might have multiple checking accounts. Yeah, I can do this with my Chase account. Why can't I do this with my Wells Fargo account? It's really evolved though since then, right? As we think about the height of social media, people are now, comparing their app experience to those social media apps, right? Think of Instagram, TikTok, right? We are now conditioned that if things aren't 1 to 2 swipes of the thumb, it's not kind of in the realm of possibilities of things that I like to do. And this is starting to bleed over into the banking world, right? If I can't send money digitally with 2 swipes of my thumb, I'm going to be frustrated. And we're starting to see this. It's obviously a lot more heightened with the younger generation because they're a lot more, involved in those social media. But even the older generation who are starting to use these digital apps, right? If they can't figure out how to do it, or it's not something that's like quick to do, they're going to be really frustrated. So I think it starts with, that evaluation of like another bank, but it's evolved to the different things like TikTok, Instagram, Amazon, things like that.
Well, it seems like we have our work cut out for us and having these digital experiences get better, especially as we think about bleeding expectations from all over across every industry. So, as in the banking world, though, what would you think about drive successful digital experiences? What's really essential that banks get right?
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done, of course, but what we see is ease and speed really make successful digital touch points. Right. So I'll use kind of the example of like making a deposit, right? This is something that has become way more digital in the last, 5 to 6 years. Um, but if you can't make that experience super easy, and what I mean is think about you get a check, you open up the mobile app, you take a photo, it gets deposited into your account, right? That's an easy experience. But if something breaks along the way, right, the camera doesn't work properly, maybe the app doesn't load properly, the check's ineligible to read, something doesn't work, the experience starts to break. And so in our survey, we actually ask a lot of the questions around ease, and it's on a 1 to 7 scale. Think of 7 as like perfectly easy, the example that I just gave. That's where NPS is the highest, right? That's where people are the happiest when things are just super easy to do or super quick. If they go from a 7 though to a 6, so think perfectly easy to just easy, there is a huge NPS penalty, right? Those expectations that customers have, again, mimicking it to an Instagram or a TikTok, if it's not easy, 2 swipes of the thumb, I'm going to be frustrated. And so going from that 7 to a 6, there's a big break in NPS, and we're starting to see that. So again, I think it really comes down to how can you make your app easy to use, but the episodes that those customers are going through, how can they quickly go through them so that they can complete that episode and kind of move on with their day? That tends to what's drive the digital touch points the most.
Yeah, I love that point around the 7 to 6 because I think that, of course, everyone who gets a 7, of course, they're going to be the happiest, right, and have the highest NPS. But the frustration that's caused even going to a 6 is really interesting. And I believe that frustration, kind of that NPS penalty, has been increasing over time as well, which shows that those expectations are increasing as digital experiences improve across any type of mobile app. So, who's doing this well though? So if we think about who are getting the 7s, right? Who's the ones that have really good digital experiences? What are the banks that are doing well and succeeding in the space?
Yeah, I think when you kind of look at digital banking in general, I think the bank that comes to mind first is USAA. They were kind of in the realm that was their business strategy, right? They're serving the military member, community, and they don't have any physical locations. So in order to do certain banking activities, you either had to call in or do it some other way. And I think USA put a lot of investment in their mobile and digital experience. So they actually created a pretty world class digital experience. And in fact, the technology they use for like mobile capture and the make it a positive experience, that's being adopted now with many other banks in terms of, Discover's using it. There are a number of other banks who start using the technology that USA really adopted. I think that's kind of like where the baseline is in terms of digital banking. But now, as I mentioned, things are really evolving, and different episodes and journeys are going into the digital world. We look at some of these neobanks like Chime. I think they really disrupted the industry in terms of how digital banking has evolved. They were really the first bank to allow customers to open like a new checking account, kind of end to end. Being able to go online, apply, be able to talk to someone virtually about the account, digital verify yourself, and then being able to access those funds relatively quickly. And that's kind of bled over to a lot of those everyday banking, right? Since they're not just a banking mobile app, they're kind of a, as I mentioned, they're really good with easy, quick to use. They're kind of on that technology perspective of an Instagram or a TikTok. They've made things very easy to use. And now we're starting to see a lot more banks adapt a lot of the things, as I mentioned, that USA and Chime, brought to the industry.
Yeah, so you mentioned USA and Chime, both clearly digital leaders, but I assume that not every bank is the same, and there's probably key differences between digital banks, regional banks, and national banks. How do you see those three kind of sets of banks do, and what's different about their digital capabilities? Or
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is something we think about all the time. There definitely is a difference. Yeah, I think first and foremost, obviously digital banks handle this really well. They changed the industry. Kind of as I mentioned, that full end to end for like account experiences or even some of those disputes. Which forced national and regional banks to adapt that technology. Right, a lot of people who have a lot of these neobank accounts, they have some sort of national or regional account as well. So they're comparing it to that regard. If I can't do it with my Chime account, and I can't do it with my Bank of America account, what kind of gives? So I think that's really big. From the national bank perspective, they have put a lot of investment into the digital technologies. Taking things out of the branch like deposits, checking your account, again, things that are lower cost to serve. They want to kind of keep the people that go to the branch to those more emotional touch, right? Like seeking financial advice or disputing some sort of fee. They believe that their people can help do that. So let's take the digital things and keep them digital, which is where customers are the happiest. The regional banks are in a very interesting crossroads. I think part of it is a demographic perspective. They tend to skew a little bit older. So it's not just, hey, here's a digital app, send money. There's a little bit of an education involved. And one of the things that we've seen some banks do is for their customers that are coming into the branch for any type of journey, say like opening up an account, they'll come in and say, hey, I want to open up an account today. The teller or the bank manager will actually show them how to do it digitally and walk them through. Or if they're coming in to like check their account or send money, they'll actually show them how to log on to the .com or mobile app version and be able to do it digitally. So for the regional banks, there's some education involved, which I think is kind of there's almost like a level harder step in there that maybe the national or digital banks don't have. But it is definitely different among those kind of different leveled banks across the board in the U.S.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think it's telling to what kind of who your demographics are, who your customer base is, right, and how quickly they are to adopt digital channels. Well, at the end of the day, digital isn't everything, though, right? And I'd love to just touch on as we wrap up here. What are some experiences that maybe shouldn't go digital, or are there experiences that should stay human? What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, it's something we look at all the time as well, right? We don't tell banks to just unload all their money onto digital. There are certain things that do work really well in the human channel. I think the first thing in banking, especially with kind of where the economy is right now, is like seeking some sort of financial advice. Yes, it's good to have options on your website, on your mobile app, but at the end of the day, customers are wanting that expertise that they originally signed up for with having a bank. They want to feel secure. They want their kind of wellness in check in terms of where things are financially, and who better to talk to than bankers? And I think that's really one of the biggest journeys that we're seeing still maintained in the human channel is they want to have those appointments. They want to be able to walk into the branch and talk about my 401k or my savings account, maybe the interest rates that are available to me. I think that's kind of the first thing that we see. We still see some of these disputes handled in the human channel. There are some banks that don't have the technology right now that's kind of letting them, run fully end-to-end digitally. And there are a lot of customers who want that human touch. They want that empathetic rep to tell them everything's going to be okay. I'm looking into this for you. I'm really sorry this happened. Customers still expect that type, especially if money's being taken out of your account. They want someone to be accountable for that if it's some sort of random charge that they received. So we still see some of that in the human channel, but the banks that have figured out how to do that digitally, it is working really well. So I think there is kind of that hybrid approach, right? If you want your customer to, dispute something digitally, they can. But if they do want to call into the call center and speak to someone about what that resolution looks like, you can do that as well. So I think that's really what we're starting to see now, although that evolving nature is always going to be there, right? So I think we'll see what this looks like in 2 to 3 years, but very interested to see as we think about how digital landscape has evolved over time, at least in the banking industry for the US.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to see where this all goes in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you, Taylor, for your time today. It's great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Awesome chatting about this too. I could talk about it for hours.